Myself Mahima. I'm currently doing my internship at Arvas College of Naturopathy and Yogic Sciences. So last class we have started to discuss about biochemistry of carbohydrates. So before we start our today's topic, let's just recall whatever we have discussed in our last class. So we just discussed about a basics of carbohydrates. That is, we studied about definition of carbohydrates, their molecular formula, and their classification. That is monosaccharide, disaccharide, oligo, and polysaccharide. Under monosaccharides, we have studied about their properties and their classifications, and disaccharides, oligosaccharides, and polysaccharides in that homopolysaccharides and heteropolysaccharides. So today we'll be discussing about a carbohydrate metabolism. That is how these carbohydrates are metabolized in our body and how they're going to provide us energy. So it includes major metabolic pathways and minor metabolic pathways. Major metabolic pathways like glycolysis, pyruvate oxidation, citric acid cycle, gluconeogenesis, HMP shunt pathway, and glycogen metabolism. And there are two minor pathways, that is fructose and galactose metabolism. So before we begin the pathways, let's just have some idea about these terms. Uh, First term is glycolysis. So glycolysis is the oxidation of glucose to pyruvate and lactate. So lysis is breakdown. So the glucose is breakdown into and forming end product of pyruvate or lactate is known as glycolysis. Then second one is citric acid cycle. Citric acid cycle is oxidation of acetyl CoA to carbon dioxide. Is known as this pathway is known as citric acid cycle. This is a final common oxidative pathway for carbohydrate, fats, or amino acids. And next term is gluconeogenesis. Gluco means glucose, neo means new, genesis means synthesis. So synthesis of a glucose, new glucose from non-carbohydrate precursors is termed as gluconeogenesis. And next term is glycogenesis. So glycogenesis is glycogen is it's here only. Glycogen synthesis is known as glycogenesis, formation of glycogen from glucose. We all know that glycogen is a homopolysaccharide which is made up of a number of glucose molecules in it. And next term is glycogenolysis. Glycogenolysis is breakdown of the glycogen into the glucose is termed as glycogenolysis. The next term is exose monophosphate shunt pathway. It is also termed another name is pentose phosphate pathway. It's alternate to glycolysis pathway and TCA cycle for the oxidation of the glucose. Next is galactose metabolism. It's a minor pathway. It includes conversion of galactose to glucose and synthesis of lactose is galactose metabolism. Fructose metabolism is oxidation of fructose to pyruvate. So we'll be studying all these cycles in detail. So let's move to glycolysis now. So glycolysis is a very important pathway and a very basic pathway in the carbohydrates. So glycolysis, as we already know that it's a oxidation of glucose to pyruvate or lactate. So first we'll go through the salient features. What are the salient features of this? This takes place in the cells of the body. Glycolysis takes place in the cells of the body. So the enzymes of this particular glycolysis pathway is present in the cytosomal fraction. So it takes place in the cytosol of the cell. And there are two types of glycolysis, anaerobic and aerobic glycolysis. So anaerobic, as the term defines, anaerobic is absence of oxygen. So absence of oxygen, so I have written glucose, absence of oxygen. So the end product here will be lactate in the absence of oxygen in anaerobic glycolysis. And aerobic glycolysis means in the presence of oxygen. So the end product of glycolysis will be pyruvate. So this is a major pathway for the ATP, that is energy synthesis in tissues like lacking mitochondria, example erythrocytes, cornea, lens, etc. These tissues lacks mitochondria. So this is a major pathway which provides ATP for them and very essential for brain. So in last class also we discussed that brain is completely dependent on a glucose for the energy. So glycolysis is very essential for brain. And the intermediates of glycolysis are useful for the synthesis of amino acids and fat. And reversal of glycolysis with alternate arrangements at the irreversible steps will result in the synthesis of glucose. So we'll get to know about this irreversible steps, reversible steps when we'll deal with the pathway. So when we reverse this reversal of glycolysis, that is opposite to the glycolysis, will be the gluconeogenesis pathway. So we'll get to know that in a while. Now let's know more about aerobic glycolysis and anaerobic glycolysis. So aerobic glycolysis is in the presence of oxygen. So here each molecule of glucose oxidizes and produces 2 molecules of pyruvate. So 1 molecule of glucose give rise to 2 molecules of pyruvate and 2 molecules of NADH in the presence of oxygen. And this pyruvate is converted into acetyl-CoA by oxidative decarboxylation. So oxidative decarboxylation means one carbon atom will be removed from the pyruvate, and so it will be converted into acetyl-CoA. And anaerobic glycolysis, this occurs in the absence of oxygen. So here glucose will be first converted into pyruvate, then it is reduced by the NADH and forms a lactate. So this lactate will be used in the liver for the purpose of gluconeogenesis. Lactate is also acts as a precursor for the synthesis of glucose. And this valuable source of ATP, whatever the ATP is formed during the anaerobic glycolysis, it's a valuable source of ATP in the tissues that lack mitochondria, or when the cells are deprived of sufficient oxygen, such as in hypoxia, shock, and strenuous exercise conditions. So reactions of glycolysis, so that the glycolysis pathway has 3 distinct phases. First is energy investment phase or a priming stage, and second phase is splitting phase, and third phase is energy generation phase. So we'll see what are these 3 steps. Let's go through this pathway. So here first step is phosphorylation of glucose. So you can see the glucose is converted into glucose 6-phosphate. So phosphorylation of glucose means adding of phosphate group to the glucose. This will be carried by the enzyme hexokinase or glucokinase. So here you can see the ATP is utilized and ADP is released. So that's why it is termed as I said energy investment phase. So here it is consuming energy. It's not releasing energy. It is consuming ATP for the conversion of glucose to glucose 6-phosphate. And again, second step is isomerization of glucose 6-phosphate. So glucose 6-phosphate in the presence of the enzyme phosphoxoisomerase converted into fructose 6-phosphate. I hope you all clear about isomerization. Isomers is a property of a monosaccharide. So their molecular formula is same, but they differ only in the structural formula. So in the presence of the enzyme phosphoxoisomerase, glucose 6-phosphate will be converted into fructose 6-phosphate. Next, third step is phosphorylation of fructose 6-phosphate. Again, phosphorylation means again one more phosphate group is going to add to this fructose 6-phosphate. So this will be carried by the enzyme phosphofructokinase. Here also you can see ATP is utilized. ATP is not released here. ATP is utilized by this enzyme. So the formed product is fructose 1,6 bisphosphate. So these up to here, this phase is known as energy investment phase. Next is cleavage of fructose 1,6 bisphosphate. So this is next is splitting phase. So this is the splitting phase here. So under the influence of the enzyme aldolase, fructose 1,6 bisphosphate is divided into glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and dihydroxyacetone phosphate. So dihydroxyacetone can be it's reversible, so this can be easily converted into glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So this aldolase acts on fructose 1,6 bisphosphate and splits the fructose 1,6 bisphosphate into glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and dihydroxyacetone phosphate. So next step is oxidation of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. Now this, under the influence of this enzyme glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate dehydrogenase, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is converted into 1,3 bisphosphoglyceride. Here you can see NADH is formed. Next step is synthesis of 3-phosphoglycerate and ATP. So 1,3 bisphosphoglycerate is converted into 3-phosphoglyceride and it is catalyzed by the enzyme phosphoglycerate kinase. Here you can see the ATP is released. So 3-phosphoglycerate, next step is isomerization of 3-phosphoglycerate to 2-phosphoglycerate. So 3-phosphoglycerate is converted into 2-phosphoglycerate by the action of the enzyme phosphoglycerate mutase. Next step is dehydration of 2-phosphoglycerate. So this is carried by the enzyme enolase. 2-phosphoglycerate is converted into phosphoenol pyruvate. And next step is synthesis of pyruvate and ATP. So under the influence of the enzyme pyruvate kinase, phosphoenol pyruvate is converted into pyruvate. Here you can see ATP is synthesis. So here you can see there are arrows which are only at one side, and here both the sides. So this is reversible. So this first step, this one step, and last step, these three are irreversible steps. So when they have converted into glucose 6-phosphate under the influence of the enzyme hexokinase or glucokinase, again with the same enzyme, this glucose 6-phosphate cannot be converted into glucose. So if we do some arrangements, because otherwise with some other enzymes it can be reversible, that pyruvate can be converted into phosphoenol pyruvate with some other enzymes. So special arrangements at these three steps will be, and the reversal from pyruvate to glucose will be a gluconeogenesis. So energetics, that is production of ATP in glycolysis. So under anaerobic glycolysis only 2 ATP will be formed, and in aerobic conditions 8 ATP. So we'll see how. Here first we'll see this, how many ATPs are formed. So NADH. So this NADH what is formed, this will go for oxidative phosphorylation and it will gives 3 ATP. So there is a 1 NADH here, so 3 ATP. And here 1 ATP is released, 3 plus 1, 4. So here 1, 5. And as I said, this glucose is being divided into glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and dihydroxyacetone phosphate. So this dihydroxyphosphate can be converted into glyceraldehyde. So there are 2 glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and there are 2 pyruvate are going to form from 1 glucose molecules. So it should be double. So 3 plus 3 here, NADH, 2 NADH from 2 glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate molecules. So 6 ATP. So here 2, here 2. So 10 ATPs are formed. And here 1 ATP is utilized here in this step and 1 ATP is utilized in this step. So the total ATP in the aerobic conditions will be 8 ATP. Next is regulation of glycolysis. So this the 3 steps which are catalyzed by the enzymes hexokinase or glucokinase, phosphofructokinase and pyruvate kinase are irreversible. So these 3 enzymes are the main regulators of the glycolysis pathway. So these 3 stages mainly regulate the glycolysis. So we'll see one by one. Hexokinase. So this hexokinase is inhibited by the glucose 6-phosphate. So this enzyme prevents the accumulation of glucose 6-phosphate. And glucokinase is under the control of insulin. So insulin, which is the which activates this glycolysis pathway. Phosphofructokinase. This is an allosteric enzyme. So this enzyme catalyzes the rate limiting committed step, which will be activated again by the insulin. So allosteric activators of this phosphofructokinase are fructose 2,6 bisphosphate, AMP, ADP, pi. Whereas this ATP citrate hydrogen ions are inhibitors to this phosphofructokinase. So if it inhibits phosphofructokinase, and this pathway will be inhibited. Then next is pyruvate kinase. This is inhibited by the ATP and activated by the fructose 1,6 phosphatate. So active in dephosphorylated state. This pyruvate kinase is activated in the dephosphorylated state and inactive in the phosphorylated state. So there is one more cycle under this glycolysis, Rapoport-Lubbering cycle. So this is a supplementary to glycolysis. This occurs only in erythrocytes, that is RBCs. So this is mainly concerned with the synthesis of 2,3 bisphosphoglycerate. So 1,3 bisphosphoglycerate in glycolysis converted to 2,3 bisphosphoglycerate by the enzyme 2, bisphosphoglycerate mutase. So we have seen in glycolysis pathway there is only 1,3 bisphosphoglycerate. There's nothing like 2,3 bisphosphoglycerate, but it's happening only in Rapoport-Lubbering cycle. So why it is converted to 2,3 BPG? The significance of this Rapoport-Lubbering cycle. So it's because this production of 2,3 BPG allows glycolysis to proceed without the synthesis of ATP. So this cycle is not happening for the synthesis of ATP. Therefore, it is a shunt pathway of glycolysis to dissipate the waste energy, that is not required by the erythrocytes. So it will just remove the waste energy that is not required by the erythrocytes. And it also combines with the hemoglobin and reduces the hemoglobin affinity with oxygen. Oxyhemoglobin unloads more oxygen to the tissues. And this, when we can see this increase 2,3 bisphosphoglycerate will be observed in the conditions like hypoxia, anemia, and fetal tissues. Next is conversion of pyruvate to acetyl-CoA. Now, this is done by oxidative decarboxylation. So oxidative decarboxylation is nothing but pyruvate is a 3-carbon atom compound. So it will be converted into 2-carbon atom acetyl-CoA. That is decarboxylation means removal of 1 carbon atom. So this is a irreversible. So it's a irreversible reaction. This is catalyzed by the multi-enzyme complex known as pyruvate dehydrogenase complex. So PDH. This is a multi-enzyme complex known as pyruvate dehydrogenase complex. So this high activities of this particular PDH enzyme is found in cardiac muscle and the kidney. And PDH requires 5 coenzymes, namely TPP, lipomide, FAD, coenzyme A, and NAD+. So this is a reaction, pyruvate plus NAD plus CoA. Under the influence of the enzyme, pyruvate dehydrogenase complex converted to acetyl-CoA plus hydrogen carbon dioxide plus NADH plus hydrogen atom. And then we'll move on to the citric acid cycle. So citric acid cycle, it's also known as Krebs cycle or tricarboxylic acid. So TCA cycle is the most important pathway for the energy supply to the body. So above 65 to 70% of ATP is synthesized through this citric acid cycle. And citric acid cycle involves the oxidation of acetyl-CoA to the carbon dioxide and water, and it utilizes 2/3 of total oxygen consumed by the body, and it is the final oxidative pathway. This cycle not only supplies energy but also provides many intermediates required for the synthesis of amino acids, glucose, and etc. We'll see what are the intermediates coming out from this pathway, and they'll be required for the synthesis of amino acids and glucose and etc. and other compounds. So this cycle is proposed by Hans Adolf Krebs in 1937. Oh, so there's one interesting story about him. This cycle, about this cycle, he first prepared a manuscript about this particular cycle, and he went to ask journal Nature to publish it, but they didn't publish. But after that, it got published in another journal. So he used to carry this rejection letter by journal Nature, and he used to tell researchers, don't be discouraged, if it got rejected. And the location of TCA cycle. So this TCA cycle, enzymes of this TCA cycle are located in mitochondrial matrix in close proximity to the electron transport chain. So this will be occurring in the mitochondria of the cell. And overview about this cycle. So it involves combination of 2 carbon acetyl CoA with 4 carbon oxaloacetate to produce 6 carbon tricarboxylic acid in citrate. So here oxaloacetate is considered to play a catalytic role in the citric acid cycle. And TCA cycle is an open cycle since many compounds enter and leave. But it looks like a closed cycle, but it is an open cycle because since many compounds enter and leave, hence it is an open cycle. So now we'll see about the pathway. So here you can see, here pyruvate, it's a 3 carbon compound. It's under the influence of the enzyme pyruvate dehydrogenase. It is converted into 2 carbon atom acetyl CoA. This is the acetyl CoA. So now the first step is formation of the citrate. So here acetyl CoA and oxaloacetate in the presence of the enzyme citrate synthase. Citrate synthase, this forms a citrate. So this molecule acetyl and oxaloacetate under the enzyme citrate synthase forms a citrate. Next step is citrate is isomerized to isocitrate. So citrate, this will be occurring in the 2. So this first step is this step is followed by two steps. First step is aconit. So this first step is catalyzed by the aconitase enzyme. So citrate will be converted into cis aconitate first. So here there is a removal of one hydrogen, water molecule. So there is a dehydration, and then again under the influence of the same enzyme aconitase, the water is being added, that is hydration. So then there will be a formation of isocitrate. So second and third steps involving the citrate is isomerized to isocitrate. So the next step is formation of alpha ketoglycerate. So this is also involved in 2 steps. So here isocitrate dehydrogenase is the enzyme which converts isocitrate to oxalosuccinate. So here you can see NADH, NAD plus is converted into NADH. And oxalosuccinate under the influence of the enzyme isocitrate dehydrogenase is converted into alpha ketoglycerate. And here you can see the carbon dioxide is released here. Next step is conversion of alpha ketoglycerate to succinyl CoA. So this is the enzyme alpha ketoglycerate dehydrogenase catalyzes alpha ketoglycerate to succinyl CoA. Here also you can see NAD plus is converted to NADH here. And next step is formation of a succinate. So succinyl CoA is converted into succinate. It is carried by the enzyme succinate thiokinase. And then next step is formation of fumarate. So fumarate is formed by the enzyme succinate dehydrogenase. So succinate will be converted into fumarate. And here you can see there's not a formation of NADH. Instead of NADH, there's a formation of FADH2. Next step is conversion of fumarate to L-malate. So this will be carried by the enzyme fumarase. And there's a release of water molecule. And then L-malate is converted into oxaloacetate. So this will be carried by the enzyme This reaction is carried by the enzyme malate dehydrogenase. So here also NADH is formed, and this oxaloacetate will be utilized by the another acetyl CoA for the same reaction. So last product is oxaloacetate is formed. So we'll see about the energetics of TCA cycle. So here there are 4 reducing equivalents, 3 as NADH and 1 as FADH2 is formed. So we saw here this first NADH is formed here, isocitrate dehydrogenase, here one, and here second one, and here one FADH2 is formed, and here NADH. There are 4 equivalents. So 4 reducing equivalents are formed, and then oxidation of 3 NADH by ETC, electron transport chain, coupled with oxidative phosphorylation results in synthesis of 9 ATP. So because 1 NADH give rise to 3 ATP, so and where this FADH2 will give rise to 2 ATP. So totally from these 4 reducing equivalents, there will be 11 ATP will be formed, and there is one substrate level phosphorylation. So substrate level phosphorylation is here in this succinate thiokinase. Here you can see GDP is converted to GTP. So this is a substrate level phosphorylation. So there is a 1 ATP formed here, addition of 12 ATP from the 1 acetyl CoA. From 1 acetyl CoA, we'll get 12 ATP. And we know that there are 2 pyruvates are formed. So from 2 pyruvates, 2 acetyl CoAs are formed. So from 2 acetyl CoA molecules, there will be 24 ATP will be formed. Next is role of vitamins in the TCA cycle. So this thiamine it acts as a TPP, it acts as a coenzyme for the alpha ketoglutarate dehydrogenase. And next is riboflavin, it acts as a FAD for the succinate dehydrogenase. And niacin as NAD plus as electron acceptor for isocitrate dehydrogenase, alpha ketoglutarate dehydrogenase, and malate dehydrogenase. And there's one more vitamin, pantothenic acid, it acts as a coenzyme A. Next is regulation of citric acid cycle. So regulation is brought by the enzyme or the levels of ADP. So this is also mainly citric acid regulation is brought by the enzymes and also the levels of ADP. So the first enzyme is citrate synthase. So this will be inhibited by the ADP, NADH, acetyl CoA, and succinyl CoA. So if it got inhibited by ATP and NADH, acetyl CoA, and succinyl CoA, so this whole citric acid will be inhibited. And then next enzyme is isocitrate dehydrogenase. This is activated by the ADP and inhibited by the ATP and NADH. Next is alpha ketoglutarate dehydrogenase, is inhibited by succinyl CoA and NADH. So availability of ADP, it's very important for cycle to proceed. Why? Because it has to convert this NADH has to converted into ATP, that is oxidative phosphorylation has to happen. Hence this ADP, availability of ADP is very, very important. So this cycle has a special nature, that is amphibolic nature, because it is both catabolic and anabolic in nature. Catabolic means we know that's breakdown, and anabolic is synthetic in nature. So few examples why it is catabolic we saw in the last pathway, that is citric acid cycle. So anabolic few examples are the succinyl CoA is used for the synthesis of porphyrins and heme. Hence it is anabolic nature. This is a synthetic property. So it will succinyl CoA, which is a intermediate of citric acid cycle. This will be utilized in the synthesis of porphyrins and heme. Next is oxaloacetate and alpha ketoglutarate. This respectively serves as a precursor for the synthesis of aspartate and glutamate. They are the amino acids. They will be helping for the synthesis of these 2 amino acids. Next, we'll see overall energetics of glucose oxidation. So we know this one molecule of glucose. This is a 6 carbon atom. So this will undergo glycolysis and there will be a formation of 2 molecules of pyruvate or lactate. That is 3 carbon atom. So pyruvate is a 3 carbon atom molecule. So there will be a formation of 2 molecules of pyruvate. So pyruvate is oxidatively decarboxylated to acetyl-CoA, which is a 2 carbon atom, which enters the citric acid cycle and gets completely oxidized to carbon dioxide and water. So we know in glycolysis there will be there will be synthesis of 8 ATP. So you can see in bracket there is written of 7. Why? It is because when we consider this is this red color represent the ATP synthesis as per new P is to O ratios of 2.5 for NADH. Here in 8 we have considered NADH value as 3 ATP, but according to the new ratio it is a 2.5 for NADH and for FADH it is 1.5. So these bracket values is for that when we consider NADH value as 2.5 and FADH DH2 value 1.5. So the total ATP produced in under the aerobic condition is 38. So in glycolysis there will be a formation of 8 ATP under the aerobic conditions. And in citric acid cycle, as I said, there are 2 acetyl-CoAs because of 2 pyruvates are formed, 2 acetyl-CoAs. So from one acetyl-CoA there will be a formation of 12 ATP. So 12 and double is 24. So 24 ATPs are formed and this 8 ATPs. So this total ATP per molecule of glucose under under aerobic condition is 38. And this is 32 values according to this ratio, that is 2.5 for NADH and 1.5 for FADH2. So next pathway is gluconeogenesis. So the synthesis of glucose from non-carbohydrate compounds is termed as gluconeogenesis. So glucose, that is new glucose synthesis is termed as gluconeogenesis. So this major precursor for this gluconeogenesis are lactate. So this gluconeogenesis, glucose formation can be from lactate, pyruvate, glycerol, glucogenic amino acids and propionate. So these acts as the precursors for the synthesis of glucose. And location is mainly in the cytosol. So mostly takes place in liver. So 1 kg per day and some extent in kidney also. So, and the importance of this gluconeogenesis, why it is happening, even though we are intaking a glucose every day in the form of carbohydrates, what we are taking for. So why this gluconeogenesis has to happen? So this, this brain and CNS, RBCs, testes and kidney medulla completely dependent on glucose for continuous supply of energy. So they completely depend on, they're not dependent on protein or fats for the energy, but they completely depend on glucose. So here you can see human brain consumes at least 120 gram of glucose per day out of 160 gram needed by the entire body. So it is completely dependent on glucose for the energy. Hence gluconeogenesis is happening. And glucose is the source that supplies the skeletal muscles under the anaerobic conditions. And in fasting, even more than a day, gluconeogenesis must occur to meet the basal requirements of the body for glucose and to maintain the intermediates of TCA cycle. So certain metabolites in the tissues accumulate in the blood. Example, lactate, glycerol, etc. So this gluconeogenesis effectively clears them from the blood because these products will be utilized for the glucose synthesis. So now we will see the pathway of gluconeogenesis. These two pathways are the same. So to differentiate between the glycolysis and gluconeogenesis, I have just put this pathway too. So first, we know this pyruvate, this is a irreversible step. Pyruvate cannot be converted into phosphoenol pyruvate by the enzyme pyruvate kinase. So now pyruvate, which is present in the mitochondria, this pyruvate will be converted into oxaloacetate by the enzyme pyruvate carboxylase. Here it is ATP is utilized here too. So pyruvate carboxylase is converted into pyruvate carboxylase is the enzyme which catalyzes the pyruvate to oxaloacetate, and ATP is used. So next, oxaloacetate is it's due to membrane impermeability. It cannot diffuse out of mitochondria to the cytosol. So it has to convert it into malate. So malate is permeable to diffuse out from the mitochondria. So under the influence of the enzyme mitochondrial malate dehydrogenase, this oxaloacetate will be converting into malate, and then malate will be easily diffused from the mitochondria to the cytosol. So again, same, this malate will be again converted into oxaloacetate. It is under the influence of the enzyme cytosolic malate dehydrogenase. And after that, now oxaloacetate is formed, and oxaloacetate under the influence of PEP carboxykinase. So this is the enzyme. Here you can see this PEP carboxykinase enzyme converted the pyruvate to phosphophenol pyruvate. So this is, you can see here in glycolysis, the enzyme which acts for the conversion of phosphophenol pyruvate to pyruvate was pyruvate kinase. But here pyruvate has to convert it to oxaloacetate, then again to malate, and then under the influence of PEP carboxykinase, it has been converted into phosphophenol pyruvate. So up to here, these are the same steps of glycolysis and gluconeogenesis. As you can see, 2-phosphoglycerate is converted into 3-phosphoglycerate. So the enzymes also same. Till here, it is the reactions of both glycolysis and gluconeogenesis are same. So here, there's one more irreversible step. So this fructose 1,6 bisphosphate cannot be converted again into fructose 6-phosphate by the action of the enzyme phosphofructokinase 1. So it needed an enzyme called fructose 1,6 bisphosphatase. So this fructose 1,6 bisphosphatase converts the fructose 1,6 bisphosphate to fructose 6 phosphate. And then it's a reversible step. This glucose 6-phosphate can be converted into fructose 6-phosphate, and fructose 6-phosphate can be converted to glucose 6-phosphate by this enzyme phosphoexose isomerase. Here also in gluconeogenesis also, phosphoexose isomerase converts the fructose 6-phosphate to glucose 6-phosphate, and glycolysis also it's the same because it's a reversible step. And there is a first step, it's a irreversible step. So this hexokinase cannot convert glucose 6-phosphate to glucose. So under the action of enzyme glucose 6-phosphatase, this glucose 6-phosphate is converted into glucose. So the new glucose is formed. So this, from down to up, this is a gluconeogenesis pathway. From glucose to pyruvate synthesis is a glycolysis pathway. So these are the sources for this gluconeogenesis. So gluconeogenesis from amino acids, except leucine and lysine amino acids, this all the other amino acids will be act as a precursors. So this results in the formation of pyruvate or the intermediates of TCA cycle. And from glycerol, glycerol also is mostly liberated in the adipose tissues by the hydrolysis of fats or TGs. So the TGs, after hydrolysis of fats, there will be a formation of glycerol. So this glycerol also acts as a precursor. It is also utilized for the synthesis of glucose. And from propunate, this is the oxidation of this propunate is formed. Oxidation of ornithine fatty acids and the breakdown of some amino acids yields the propionyl CoA. And succinyl CoA is formed from the propionyl CoA, enters the gluconeogenesis via TCA cycle from lactate. So there's a name for this cycle for the gluconeogenesis from lactate, that is Cori cycle. Here the lactate is produced by the active skeletal muscle, is a major precursor, and lactate is also a dead end in glycolysis, it's anaerobic glycolysis. So this this has some one pathway. I'll explain you in a while. And there's one more called glucose and alanine cycle. So there's a continuous transport of amino acids, mainly this predominantly alanine, from the muscle to liver, which predominantly occurs during the starvation. So we'll see what is this Cori cycle and glucose alanine cycle in the detail now. So in muscle, glucose is converted into a lactate. This lactate cannot be utilized in the muscle for the formation of for the synthesis of glucose in the muscle, because this absence of the enzyme glucose 6 phosphatase and even fructose 1,6 bisphosphatase, these two enzymes are absent in the muscle. So what so this glucose, what has been converted to lactate, this lactate is easily uh, carried through the blood, and it can be easily transferred to the liver. So this will be carried through the blood and it is entered the liver. This uh, this lactate is from and again converted into pyruvate, and this will leads to the formation of, and this gluconeogenesis reactions happens in the liver, and there will be a formation of glucose in the liver, and again this glucose is returned back to the muscle. This blue, whatever you can see, this whole reaction is Cori cycle. And there's one more cycle, that is glucose alanine cycle. So in a conditions like starvation, this there'll be a continuous supply of alanine. So how pyruvate is converted into alanine is by transamination reaction. So in a muscle, this pyruvate is converted into alanine by transamination. So this alanine also easily carried through the blood to the liver. So and here gluconeogenesis happen, and there will be a synthesis of new glucose, and then this again this glucose will be written back into the carried back to the muscle via blood. So this is this is all about Cori cycle and glucose alanine cycle. So next is regulation of gluconeogenesis. So this regulation is mainly dependent on the hormone glucagon, and we saw insulin was the main regulator in the glycolysis. So here in the gluconeogenesis, this is the glucagon is the hormone which regulates the gluconeogenesis, and the availability of substrates also regulates the gluconeogenesis. So influence of glucagon is explained in two mechanisms here. The first is this active form of pyruvate kinase is converted to inactive form through mediation of cyclic AMP. So decreased pyruvate kinase reduced results in the reduced conversion of phosphoenol pyruvate. So this active form of this pyruvate is converted into inactive form. This through mediation of cyclic AMP under the influence of the hormone glucagon. So decreased pyruvate kinase results in the reduced conversion of phosphoenol pyruvate. And next is this glucagon reduces the concentration of fructose 1,6 bisphosphate. So this compound allosterically inhibits the phosphofructokinase and activates the fructose 1,6 bisphosphate, which this both favors the increased gluconeogenesis. Next, availability of substrates. So glucogenic among various substrates, that is lactate, pyruvate, all those things. Among them, this gluconeogenic amino acids have stimulating influence on the gluconeogenesis, particularly important in conditions like diabetes mellitus. So next, we'll moving on to the glycogen metabolism. Glycogen metabolism involves glycogenesis and glycogenolysis. So glycogen is a storage form of glucose in the animals, and this stored mostly in the liver, that is 6 to 8% in the liver, and muscle 1 to 2%. Due to the muscle mass quantity of glycogen in muscle 250 gram, that is 3 times higher than a liver. So due to the muscle mass, more muscle mass, so there will be a storage of glycogen in muscle, there will be a 250 gram, which is 3 times higher, and whereas in liver it is 75 gram. So this glycogen will be stored as granules in the cytosol. So the prime function of liver glycogen is to maintain the blood glucose level, particularly between the meals. So this stored glucose will maintain the blood glucose levels, particularly between the meals. And then muscle glycogen serves as a fuel reserve for the supply of ATP during the muscle contraction. So why this store glycogen as a fuel source? Why not protein or fats are not considered as a fuel source for fuel source? Why glycogen as a fuel source? So these are the reasons. This glycogen can be rapidly mobilized and it can generate energy even in the absence of oxygen. So, and brain dependent on continuous supply of glucose as its energy source. And on the other hand, this fat mobilization is very slow and it needs oxygen for the energy production, and it cannot be produced glucose to a significant extent. That's why the glycogen is a fuel source and not a fat is acting as a fuel source. So now we'll see about glycogenesis. So the name itself said glycogenesis as glycogen synthesis. The synthesis of glycogen from glucose molecules is termed as glycogenesis. So this takes place in the cytosol. So it requires ATP and UTP. The end product will be glycogen. So now we'll see the pathway first. Here, the first step is synthesis of UDP glucose. So first, glucose under the influence of the enzyme glucokinase. So this requires ATP is converted into glucose 6-phosphate. That is phosphorylation of glucose has happened by the enzyme glucokinase. So glucose 6-phosphate is formed. Now under the influence of the enzyme phosphoglucomutase, glucose 6-phosphate is converted into glucose 1-phosphate. Now this step is a synthesis of UDP glucose. So this enzyme UDP glucose phosphorylase enzyme catalyzes this glucose 1-phosphate to UDP glucose, and this utilizes UTP here. So UDP glucose is formed here. So next step is requirement of primer to initiate the glycogenesis. So it's said that for this initiation of glycogenesis pathway, glycogen primer means a fragment of glycogen is needed to initiate the glycogen synthesis. But now the studies have revealed that there is a protein called glycogenin, which which functions as a similar of glycogen primer, that's fragment of primer. So even the absence of glycogen primer, this can initiate the glycogenesis pathway. So next step is glycogen synthesis by glycogen synthase. So this is the main enzyme for the glycogenesis, that is glycogen synthase. So glycogen synthase catalyzes the reaction, this glycogen primer and this 13 UDP glucose are used here. So there's you can see there's a formation of glucose molecule 1 to 16 here it has shown. So there's a formation of linear chain of glycogen that is 1,4 forming a 1, alpha 1 4 bonds. And then we know that glycogen is having a branching. So this branched molecule, so this will be this branching will be happening by the enzyme glucosyl alpha 4,6 transferase. So when this enzyme acts, so here you can see there's a formation of alpha 1,6 bond. So there's a branching. So next is say this continuous elongation by the glycogen synthase. This linear chain will be a number of molecules will be connected together through alpha 1, 4 bonds. We know that thousands of glucose molecules will be formed together with the alpha 1, 4 bonds, that is linear chain. And for this branching, this glucosyl 4,6 transferase enzyme for a branching. So this is how, so finally when these thousands of molecules of glucose are together with this alpha 1,6 and alpha 1,4 and alpha 4,6 bonds, so there'll be finally formation of glycogen. So the next is glycogenolysis. So the glycogenolysis means a degradation of stored glycogen in liver and muscle. So this pathway for the synthesis and degradation of glycogen are not reversible. And don't think that if it got reversed, then it is not glycogenolysis. It has some other pathway for glycogenolysis as some other pathway. So now we'll see. So this is a glycogen molecules. There's several thousands of number of glucose molecules. So this branching. This is a alpha 1,6 bond. So this glycogen phosphorylase is the enzyme which is the main enzyme in the glycogenolysis. So this enzyme acts on this. So there's a release of glucose 1-phosphate. So the product form is limit dextrin. So this glycogen phosphorylase action of this glycogen phosphorylase converts the glycogen into limit dextrin. But still there is a alpha 1,6, that is this branching is still there, and there are so many molecules even in the linear chain. So now as the already limit dextrin is formed, again this glycogen phosphorylase cannot be act on this. So next step is action of debranching enzyme. So the debranching enzyme is transferase. So transferase activity. So transferase activity, you can see this limit dextrin is converted into a linear chain glucose, and there's one glucose residue remain here, and still it is 1,6 bond is still there, branching is still there, but there's only one glucose residue is remained here under the action of the enzyme that is debranching enzyme, there is transferase activity. So next again the debranching enzyme alpha 1,6 glucosidase activity. So this linear chain along with alpha this glucose residue will be converted into a linear chain, and glucose is free. This glucose is removed from the action of debranching enzyme, that is alpha 1,6 glucosidase activity. Now you can see the complete only linear chain is formed. Now this glycogen phosphorylase will act. So further action of the phosphorylase enzyme will act. So there will be formation of glucose 1-phosphate. So under the influence of the enzyme phosphoglucomutase, there will be formation of glucose 6-phosphate. So this glucose 6-phosphate again in the liver there's an enzyme called glucose 6-phosphatase, which converts glucose 6-phosphate to glucose. So some molecules of glucose 6-phosphate will be utilized in the utilized for the pathway of glycolysis, and glucose is this glycogen is completely broken down into glucose. This is a glycogenolysis pathway. So now we'll see about the regulation of glycogenesis and glycogenolysis pathway. So this is controlled by the enzyme glycogen synthase and glycogen phosphorylase. So as I said before, glycogen synthase is the main enzyme for the glycogenesis, and glycogen phosphorylase is the main enzyme for the glycogenolysis. So regulation of these enzymes accomplished by three mechanisms. There are three mechanisms to explain this. First is allosteric regulation, hormonal regulation, and influence of calcium. So we'll see one by one. First is allosteric regulation. So this glycogen synthesis is increased when substrate availability and energy levels are high. So glycogen synthesis, that is glycogenesis, will be high when these substrates are more and energy levels are high, and this glycogen synthesis will be decreased when these substrate availability, when there is decreased substrate availability and when the energy levels are low. So in this picture you can see glycogen synthase is activated by this plus sign indicates its activation. So glucose 6-phosphate, when this glucose 6-phosphate is there, so it is actives the glycogenesis, and even calcium from the AMP. So this will activate the glycogenesis, whereas glucose 6-phosphate, ATP and liver glucose will inhibit this glycogen phosphorylase, whereas this calcium and AMP will activate this glycogen phosphorylase. Glycogen phosphorylase is a enzyme for glycogenolysis. So this will be activated by calcium and AMP and inhibited by glucose 6-phosphate, ATP and glucose. So in well-fed state, the availability of glucose 6-phosphate is high, so which allosterically activates the glycogen synthase. So there will be glycogenesis. There will be activation of glycogenesis. So next is hormonal regulation. So hormonal regulation of glycogen metabolism. So there regulation of glycogen synthesis by cyclic AMP. So let's make this cycle very simplified. So you can see here the glycogen synthase A and glycogen synthase B. This glycogen synthase has two forms. Glycogen synthase A, that is active form, that is dephosphorylated. This is not phosphorylated one. It is not phosphorylated glycogen synthase A. And there's a glycogen synthase B, which is inactive, which is phosphorylated. So now, under the influence of this cyclic AMP dependent protein kinase, which is active, so this converts glycogen synthase, which is active. This phosphorylates glycogen synthase A to glycogen synthase B, which is inactive. So when there will be conversion of to glycogen synthase B, which is inactive, so there will be the glycogenesis will be inhibited. So again, this glycogenesis synthase B, which is in inactive form, this can be converted again to active by the enzyme protein phosphatase 1. So this can convert again glycogen synthase B, which is inactive form, to glycogen synthase A, that is to active form. So then the glycogenesis will be activated. So this is through the action of cyclic AMP. So, and even it is under the control of the two hormones, that is glucagon and epinephrine. So hence it is a regulation of glycogen synthesis by cyclic AMP. So here we'll see it is a similar kind in glycogen this is for glycogen degradation. So the main enzyme for glycogen degradation is phosphorylase kinase. And this phosphorylase kinase also will be in two forms, that is inactive form and active form. This is also dephosphorylated one. So this will be converted into active form. This will be phosphorylated by the enzyme, that is cyclic AMP dependent protein kinase. This converts this phosphorylase kinase, which is inactive, to phosphorylase kinase to the active form. So this phosphorylase kinase converts the glycogen phosphorylase B, that is which is in inactive form, to glycogen phosphorylase A, which is active form. So this is the enzyme converting glycogen phosphorylase B, which is an inactive form, to glycogen phosphorylase A to the active. So this will convert glycogen to glucose 1-phosphate. So this will activate the glycogen degradation. So same, this will be when it has to stop, this glycogen degradation has to inhibit. So this protein phosphate 1 convert the glycogen phosphorylase A, which is active form, to glycogen phosphorylase B, which is inactive, so that this glycogen degradation will be inhibited. So this will be carried through the enzyme, hormones, glucagon and epinephrine. So next is effect of calcium ions on glycogenolysis. So when muscle contracts, calcium are released from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So this calcium binds to the calmodulin calcium modulating protein and directly activates the phosphorylase kinase. So in this diagram, you can see there's a calmodulin phosphorylase. So in the absence of this, even this calmodulin phosphorylase can convert phosphorylates the phosphorylase kinase, which is inactive, to phosphorylase kinase to the active form. So the overall effect of hormones on glycogen metabolism is that elevated glucagon or epinephrine level increases the glycogen degradation. So glycogen degradation is more on when this glucagon and epinephrine level are high. And elevated insulin results in the increased glycogen synthesis. Insulin, when this insulin is high, there will be increased glycogen synthesis. So next is hexose monophosphate shunt. So HMP shunt pathway is also called as pentose phosphate pathway, and it is an alternate pathway to the glycolysis and the TCA cycle. So, and it is anabolic in nature. Anabolic means it's synthetic in nature, and because it is considered with the synthesis of NADPH and pentoses. So these have certain functions. We'll be dealing it later. So this will be this hexose monophosphate shunt pathway will be concerned with the synthesis of NADPH and the pentoses. And location is cytosol. And tissues such as liver, adipose tissue, adrenal gland, erythrocyte, testes, and lactating mammary gland are highly active in the HMP shunt. So now we'll see about the pathway of HMP shunt. So there are two phases here, oxidative phase and non-oxidative phase. So in up to here, it is the oxidative phase. First, we'll see what is this oxidative phase. So glucose 6-phosphate, under the influence of the enzyme, this glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase catalyzes glucose 6-phosphate to 6-phosphogluconolactone. So this releases NAD plus into NADPH is formed here. So this 6-phosphogluconolactone is converted to 6-phosphogluconate. So this under the influence of the enzyme gluconolactonase, and 6-phosphogluconate will be converted into ribulose 5-phosphate under the influence of the enzyme 6-phosphogluconate dehydrogenase. So here also you can see NADPH is formed along with the carbon dioxide. So up to here, it's an oxidative phase. So now ribulose 5-phosphate is formed. So this ribulose 5-phosphate is a pentose, which will be utilizing in the synthesis of DNA, in the formation of DNA and RNA. So now we'll see. We'll start with non-oxidative phase. So under the influence of the enzyme ribulose 5-phosphate isomerase and ribulose 5-phosphate 3-epimerase. So this will be converted into ribose 5-phosphate and xylulose 5-phosphate. So now under the influence of the enzyme transketolase, this xylulose 5-phosphate, this transfers 3 carbon atom to ribose 5-phosphate. So the ribose 5-phosphate will be forming pseudoheptulose 7-phosphate. Pseudoheptulose means there are 7 carbon atoms here. So because xylulose have given 2 carbon atoms to ribose 5-phosphate. So 7, so pseudoheptulose 7-phosphate. So 3 carbon atoms are remaining. So it is a glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So again, under the influence of the enzyme transaldolase, this will be converting into fructose 6-phosphate. From the pseudoheptulose 7-phosphate, the 3 carbon atoms are transferred to glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So there will be formation of fructose 6-phosphate. This fructose 6-phosphate will be utilized for the pathway of glycolysis pathway. And there's a formation of erythrose 4-phosphate and xylulose 5-phosphate. So again, under the influence of the enzyme transketolase, this erythrose gives transfers 1 carbon atom to xylulose 5-phosphate. So there will be formation of glucose 6-phosphate here. And here, as erythrose gives 1, here it will be 3 carbon atom will be remaining. So it is a glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate will be when utilized for glycolysis along with fructose 6-phosphate. It is also used for the glycolysis pathway. So this is all about hexose monophosphate shunt pathway. So now we'll see what is the importance of this pentoses and this NADPH. So pentoses are its derivatives are useful. The pentoses formed here is You can see ribose 5-phosphate and xylulose 5-phosphate. So nucleic acid, mainly RNA and DNA, and many nucleotides such as ATP and NAD plus and FAD, etc. And next is importance of NADPH. So NADPH has so many functions in our body. So we'll see them one by one. So this NADPH is required for the reductive biosynthesis of fatty acids and steroids biosynthesis. So this requires NADPH. For the synthesis of fatty acid and steroids, NADPH is needed. So NADPH is also used in the synthesis of certain amino acid involving the enzyme glutamate dehydrogenase. And in a body, there is a continuous production of H2O2, that is hydrogen peroxide, in the living cells. So this can chemically damage the unsaturated fats, proteins, and DNA. So this will be prevented by NADPH, that is through antioxidant, that is free radical scavenging reactions, this involving NADPH. So this damage to this unsaturated fat, proteins, and DNA will be prevented. Then microsomal cytochrome P450 system in liver brings about detoxification of drugs by hydroxylation reactions involving NADPH. So detoxification of drugs also carried by this NADPH. Next is phagocytosis. So engulfment of foreign bodies, this is called phagocytosis. So this process also requires the supply of NADPH. And NADPH maintains the concentration of glutathione. So this glutathione is essentially required to preserve the integrity of RBC cell membranes. So this NADPH will maintain this concentration of glutathione. And then it's also necessary to keep ferrous ion in Fe2 plus of hemoglobin in the reduced state, so that accumulation of methemoglobin is, that is Fe3 plus, is prevented. So this will also be this NADPH will keep this ferrous ion in a reduced state. And high concentration of NADPH in lens of eyes is necessary to prevent the transparency of the lenses. So next we'll moving on to the metabolism of galactose. So metabolism of galactose, it's a minor pathway of the carbohydrates. So lactose is present in milk and milk products, is a principal dietary source of galactose. So galactose is also produced within the cells from the lysosomal degradation of glycoproteins and glycolipids. So we'll see the pathway. So galactose is converted into galactose 1-phosphate. So it's carried by the enzyme galactokinase. So it requires ATP. So this galactose 1-phosphate has to convert it to glucose 1-phosphate. So how it is going to happen is, first galactose 1-phosphate uridyl, this is through the enzyme galactose 1-phosphate uridyl transferase. So this UDP galactose is first converted into UDP glucose by the enzyme UDP exose 4 epimerase. We know that glucose and galactose are epimers. It is 1, 4 C4 epimers. Their structural formula is same, but at the 4th carbon atom, their arrangement is slightly different. So this UDP galactose is going to converted into UDP glucose by the action of the enzyme UDP exose 4 epimerase. So under the influence of the enzyme galactose 1-phosphate uridyl transferase, galactose 1-phosphate is going to convert it into glucose 1-phosphate. Now this glucose 1-phosphate is going to convert into glucose 6-phosphate by the will be utilized for the synthesis of lactose in the mammary gland by the enzyme lactase synthesis. And also this UTP galactose is also utilized for the synthesis of glycosaminoglycans, glycolipids, and glycoproteins. So this glucose 6-phosphate formed here will be converted into a glucose, and a part will be going for the pathway for the pathway glycolysis pathway. And next pathway is fructose metabolism. This fructose is also a minor pathway. So this fructose is found in free form in honey and many of the fruits. So we'll see how this fructose metabolism is happening. So fructose, so they are present in many fruits. So fructose is converted into fructose 1-phosphate. So this will be carried by the enzyme fructokinase. So fructokinase convert the fructose to fructose 1-phosphate. So under the influence of the enzyme aldolase B, this fructose 1-phosphate is converted into dihydroxyacetone and glyceraldehyde. We know that dihydroxyacetone is reversible, so this can be easily converted into glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So this this glyceraldehyde formed will be going to the glycolysis pathway, and glyceraldehyde will be converted into by reducing to a glycerol. So this glycerol will also be a precursor, will act as a precursor for the synthesis of glucose. So this is all about fructose metabolism. So today we have just dealt about metabolism. There are diseases for each pathways. There are so many diseases under each pathways that we will be dealing in our next classes. As you see, I have put so many the pictures that I have taken is not all the pictures are not from a textbook. It's because to simplify and to explain in a better way, I have taken pictures from different sources. So just correlate the pictures from here and to the textbook so that you can understand it better. So in our next class, we'll be dealing about a regulation of this blood glucose level along with the disorders of carbohydrate metabolism. And thank you. And if you like this session, please like, and do not forget to subscribe the channel on your growth. And if you felt it was useful, please share it with your friends too. Thank you.